Hey, I'm here in Los Angeles, California. It's a city full of people who are way hotter than me, but they're almost all dead inside. It's in the eyes. There's just nothing in there. Not unlike the LA River. It's a bona fide movie star, but it's polluted to the core from decades of chemical spills, pesticide-infused runoff, and the burned out rubber from 95 takes of this scene from Grease. But if you're not from Los Angeles, you might find yourself thinking, that doesn't look like a river at all. This is a river, river, dog, river. But out here in the American West, a historic drought has made it very hard for these lifeless hotties to remember that this is almost no water at all. And it's not just Californians. The more than 40 million people in the American West served by the famously overused Colorado River are being asked to conserve this water by any means necessary.
Historic water cuts to multiple states.
Shutting off the water while you're brushing your teeth, taking shorter showers.
Cut back on their water use.
Peeing in the shower? That's gonna save you a couple of flushes and save you a couple of gallons.
Get a weapon and fire it into your lawn! But no matter how much water they conserve, there's not enough to go around. So where is all the water going? Well, if you look at the 1.9 trillion gallons of Colorado River water consumed by people every year, a very unfortunate trend occurs. According to a study from 2020, all the water people use for drinking, swimming pools, watering their lawns, slip and slides, and any other private consumption accounts for just 12% of the water use. Golf courses, office parks, and all other businesses are just 4% of water use. And weighing in at 79% of all the water we use is agriculture, which is crops. And that might make sense if it was crops for people. But the vast majority of water we use in the American West goes to grow food that people do not eat. 56% of all the water in this river goes to animal agriculture, and one animal above all others. So who's taking all of America's water? The cow. Not this cow in particular, but the United States is home to 87.2 million cows. And the food those cows eat requires so much water, it's creating a real shitstorm for people who want that water for drinking, running cities, making energy, basically just stuff we need to do to live. And it would be one thing if we were blasting through our water supply because the citizens of our great nation decided that's how they wanted to use it. But the rules for who goes thirsty and who gets to flood a literal desert were written over 100 years ago and are based entirely on the unbreakable, ironclad law of dibs. They consider dibs so sacred that a single family in California, whose grandfather happened to start a dairy farm near Palm Springs in the 1920s, gets more water than the entire city of Las Vegas. The people in this part of California get more Colorado River water than all of Arizona and Nevada combined. And if that sounds like a stupid way to manage a critical resource, just wait until you hear about the foreign governments who currently have the right to use an unlimited amount of groundwater from America's deserts and are exercising that right to send cow food back to their own deserts. So as our supply of water is being decreased by climate change, which it very much is, and our demand for water is being increased by a growing population of both people and livestock, we should probably find a way to be a little more efficient with our water use. And regardless of your feeling on cheeseburgers, I think we can all agree that it's generally a good practice to just pop the hood on how we're using one of our most critical resources to see if there's anything that can be learned from it. Hi, I'm Rollie Williams, a guy with a climate science and policy degree, a little sparkle in my eye, and what I can only imagine is foot conjunctivitis. And this is a video about who's taking all of America's water. Welcome to Climate Town. To understand why we're so hell-bent on growing animal food in America's deserts, we gotta go back to the thrilling conclusion of the Civil War. The US had just been hot-glued back together, and people were free to enjoy their beloved pastimes of making horses run fast, honky baseball, and uprooting the entire family and building a new life somewhere else. But where to go? Well, what about this part? I mean, why the hell does nobody live there? Besides the people who already live there, but I'm sure they'll move. So the US hired a guy named John Wesley Powell to do a geological survey, and they crossed their fingers hoping Powell would come back saying, there's a ton of water everywhere and everything's ready to pump and grow. Powell spent 2 decades studying the Colorado River and the West overall, and then came back to Congress in 1890 with this fucking ripper of a map. Truly, look at this map. Beautiful colors, incredible detail, and the breakdown of the watersheds. Imagine trying to make this map without computers or satellites or colored pencils. It would be pert near impossible. Unfortunately, Powell found that there was just not enough water to settle the West. And if you wanted to get even a few people out there, it would make more sense to create federal dams to stabilize water access and to define your political boundaries by water flow regions instead of by arbitrary state lines. You know, because water is such a critical foundation for life and all. The indigenous people who already lived there knew that and had extremely effective water conservation techniques dating back to 10,000 BC, including sometimes being nomadic because water comes and goes in the West and you need to be able to follow it. Unfortunately, that wasn't really gonna fly with the settlers, who preferred to get hundreds of acres of their own private land that no one else can touch, and you can't tell me there's not unlimited water for my free land! And as you can probably imagine, the US government didn't listen to a single one of Powell's warnings and just waved settlers west like a third base coach in an exciting game of honky baseball. Too soon for a callback. I just said honky baseball. You know what, cut this part. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, obviously this John Wesley Powell guy didn't know what the fuck he was talking about, because I've got a cousin in Arizona and they have a swimming pool in their backyard. That's a reasonable thing to think. But first, consider the phrase credit card debt, and let's keep going. Among the places settlers flocked to was just the straight up desert, including the bone-dry Imperial Valley, California, which gets just 3 inches of rain on average per year and has more sun in the winter than any other place in the US. It's also in the movies.
Ah! That's what you get! Welcome to Earth.
Up until 1901, the Imperial Valley was a barren, uninhabited place. Because fucking of course it was the desert. But nowadays, it looks like this.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me.
That's because the US dug a canal to divert water from the Colorado River into the south side of the valley. And the Imperial Valley was not alone. The US government dammed and canaled and borrowed whatever they wanted from the mighty Colorado to suit the needs of the settlers who wanted that water. And since water was the single most important resource for these thirsty Western settlers, they made it their absolute beeswax to dibs as much water as humanly possible. After all, this is free water you get the rights to forever. You would have to be an idiot not to try to get as much as you possibly could. And so a dibsing spree for the Colorado River commenced. Farmers got a couple million gallons a year here, a couple million gallons a year there, but I mean, there's 2 trillion gallons of usable water in that son of a bitch. How could we possibly run out of water? He asked, less than halfway into a 30-minute Our favorite publications, Grist, did some excellent reporting on this, link in the bio, and found this quote from a 1960 US Supreme Court case. I am morally certain that neither in my lifetime, nor in your lifetime, nor the lifetime of your children and great-grandchildren will there be an inadequate supply of water. As the population of California exploded, the other western states got scared that Golden State farmers would dibs too hard and take all the water. And this is kind of a legitimate concern because the law of the river stipulated water was allocated based on first in time, first in right. And California was about to call shotgun on all the water before they'd even seen the car, which is not allowed, California. You have to be able to see the car. It just makes it more fair. But instead of deciding on some kind of equal distribution mechanism, the western states doubled down on the dibs system with a nationally sanctioned dibs. In 1922, Colorado, Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, and New Mexico sat down with Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover and hammered out a deal that would split the river in half hamburger style, giving upper basin states 7.5 million acre-feet per year and lower basin states 7.5 million acre-feet per year. Now, I know you know, obviously, exactly, but an acre-foot is the amount of water it takes to submerge 1 acre, or about 3/4 of a football field, in 1 foot of water. So, you know, kind of a lot of water. An acre-foot is about 325,000 gallons of water, and the Colorado River Compact doled out 15 million of these little guys to the 7 states. Sounds great. One problem: the Colorado River does not have that much water. They drew up the Colorado River Compact during some extremely wet years, and despite knowing there were only 14 million acre-feet or less for consumption, they figured it would just be a problem for future Americans to deal with. Oh, thanks guys. They also completely cut Mexico out of the initial compact, only to tack them on later by inventing a bunch of water that didn't really exist. And also, they didn't even pretend to equitably include indigenous people, but you probably already guessed that, didn't you? Oh, and another problem, water rights are hierarchical, which means senior rights holders get their entire allotment before junior rights holders even get a drop. And even if senior rights holders wanted to conserve water and send the rest down the line, they kinda can't, because water rights are subject to a use it or lose it rule. See, in an attempt to prevent people from dibsing a bunch of water, only to turn around and sell it to the highest bidder, you'd only get to keep the rights to water that you actually used. And if you think about this for an extra 10 seconds, you'll realize it's an excellent way to discourage water conservation. If a farmer decides to use less water or develop a less wasteful irrigation technique, that farmer is rewarded with having all of his extra water taken away forever. Ah, you thought I wasted that water. Bucket. Try to keep up. Anyway, farmers were also banned from selling their unused water allotment as part of the government's attempt to avoid water speculators. So if your dad's dad moved to the desert and called dibs at the exact right time, your family might now find itself with 84 billion gallons of water every year and a strong incentive to use every last drop. And it is this little quirk in America's water law that got so many desert-dwelling farmers into the cattle feed business. That's right. It's time to talk about alfalfa. Alfalfa is prized for having a lot of easily digestible protein. And if you're trying to support a dairy cow blasting out hot, high-protein milk, it's a damn fine option for feed. Beef cows tend to eat a lot of other stuff, but they'll also suck down alfalfa with the best of them when they get a crack at that good green. Before researching for this video, all my alfalfa knowledge was about this little asshole. But I've pushed all that information out to make room for this alfalfa. Now it's your problem. As a crop, alfalfa loves the sun and can grow for 5 to 7 years with way deeper roots than normal row crops. Also, if you can keep the sun shining on it year round, you can get 10 to 12 harvests per year out of the same plant. But unfortunately, alfalfa also needs a lot of water. So you're probably thinking this is one of those classic trade-offs. Ratatouille loves to cook, but he's gotta be sneaky about it or else his little rat ass will get shot. Alfalfa loves the blasting sun, but it's gotta be sopping wet basically all the time. So you gotta compromise, right? Wrong. Yes, alfalfa is also grown in other less arid parts of the US, but those places are nothing compared to the yields you can get if you have 2 ingredients: a full-on blasting desert sun year-round, and a ridiculous amount of water that you have to use. They have so much water in that part of the desert that a lot of alfalfa fields have traditionally been flood irrigated, which conveniently for us is exactly what it sounds like. You hook up a hose and make a fun little flood for your crop friends until they're soaking in an inch or 2 of water. Some of that water goes into the soil, some floats up into the air, and some runs off into another farm, or maybe all the way to the Salton Sea, a body of water filled almost entirely with excess irrigation water from the Colorado River. And by the way, we're currently out on a farm in Long Island. This is not the kind of farming we're talking about in the video. We mostly just wanted like a farmy kind of background so that it wouldn't bump too much with the other parts of the video. This is a place called Young's Farm. They do excellent work here. Thank you so much for the location. Now pretend you're back in the American West. Yeah! Another benefit of alfalfa is it can be grown year-round alongside potentially higher value seasonal crops. Got a couple extra acres and a bunch of water to use? Blast 'em, Jackson! Alfalfa can also withstand short periods of no irrigation, then pop right back. so you could drop the water demand in the summer, then bring back the same stand of alfalfa into production when there's more water available. It's honestly a pretty good crop, it just requires a fucking ton of water. And not to ride his coattails too hard or anything, but my main man John Oliver did a whole Last Week Tonight about water a couple of years ago and found this excellent clip from an Arizona alfalfa farmer interview. Roll the clip of them rolling the clip.
Just listen to this farmer in Arizona explaining why he chose to grow a particularly water-intensive crop.
Well, I just been farming it, this alfalfa. You got to keep farming it to keep the water, and that's why I was mainly doing it, was to hang on to the water.
In the Imperial Valley alone, alfalfa fever has led to the projected use of 2.6 million acre-feet of water from the Colorado River this year. And according to reporting from ProPublica and the Desert Sun, most of that water apparently goes to just 20 families in the valley, who have such senior water rights that they aren't subject to the same constraints as nearby cities. ProPublica and the Desert Sun even made some excellent graphics about it, and here they are right now. That's just one section of the Colorado River. If you look at the upper part of the river, that includes Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and the one with the horse show everybody's parents are obsessed with.
That land is mine.
You see that fence? That's mine.
That fence is mine. This field's mine.
That fucking fence down there, that's mine too.
Spinning some bitch.
And in that region, 90% of agricultural water is turned into cattle feed. I'm sweating into my own eyeballs. Yes, we do feed some cows for fun, sure, but the vast majority are fed so they can either blast out milk or be mysteriously killed and turned into beef. And I know it seems like treating an important resource like it's worth nothing and will never run out seems like a strategy that wouldn't have a downside, but folks, it has a downside. As the population and farming operations grow and they're removing more and more water for showering, drinking, and growing crops in the desert, we started writing checks that our asses couldn't cash, and we simply do not have the water for the activities we want to use it for.
The Colorado River and its reservoirs have dwindled to alarmingly low levels.
St. George, Utah is running out of water.
Dry riverbeds, depleted reservoirs, canals, and fallow fields.
And also, climate change has snuck into the party and is making everything worse in the back near the bathroom.
The worst mega drought in at least 1,200 years.
Yeah, they say climate change has fueled wildfires and threatened the economic security of farmers. It's endangering the security of energy and water resources for nearly 6 million homes and businesses across 7 states.
One study from UCLA found that rising temperatures between 2000 and 2021 have led to a loss of 30 million acre-feet of water from the Colorado River Basin, which has combined with the drought, which is also probably tied to climate change, to leave the massive reservoirs along the Colorado dangerously, historically low. The reservoirs are so low that even a massive smash of snowpack over a winter or two doesn't come close to refilling the reserves, which means this may not be an example of a classic drought, this might be aridification. While a drought is temporary and we'd expect a full rebound, aridification means the area will be permanently drier with less water available. And while the American West is particularly susceptible to a drought, we certainly don't have a monopoly on it. And I don't want to hit you over the head with it, but that means that the climate might be changing. Which means climate change. I'll fucking say it. I'm crazy. I'll say climate change right to your dang face. I'll say it at dinner, right to my uncle, and we won't talk for 6 years. But if the Colorado River water rights are too complicated, the federal rules around how much groundwater you can pump out of private wells are a whole lot simpler. There aren't any. Groundwater is water that collects in giant underground aquifers over the course of hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of years. Regulation of groundwater is usually left up to the states, but they tend to be pretty loose with the laws. And that's not me editorializing. States like Missouri literally brag about having, quote, the loosest water laws in the country, where water users have the right to, under most circumstances, use as much water as they would like and for whatever purpose they see fit. Back in the Civil War days, when honky baseball was already starting to get boring, great callback, yes, the government didn't really understand how or why groundwater flowed. In modern days, we now understand that aquifers take thousands of years to recharge. But back then, we thought it was maybe unlimited infinity water? I mean, it didn't even matter at the time because groundwater was dozens to thousands of feet below the surface. Why make a law about water that we didn't even have the technology to get to? By the 1930s, our craftiest engineers had figured out how to drill down and pump it out. But instead of making laws to regulate it, we had already established a sort of no shirt, no shoes, no problem policy. And to this day, groundwater is free and unlimited in most places. One of those places is most of Arizona, where you are free to pump as much water as you like out of their underground aquifers, which are doing just fine. I'm sorry, I'm hearing that should be declining at an alarming rate. And it's here that we get a sense of just how little of a shit America gives about its water. Because what do you think happens when you pump too much water out of an aquifer? Uh-oh, did you just Google it? Because that's cheating, and cheaters never win. But also, if you went online to find a news article about groundwater, you may have found more than you bargained for. That's right, I'm talking about bias. Lucky for you, there's Ground News. Yes, sir, Ground News is an independent website and app that gives you an easier and more data-driven way to read your news. Every story comes with a visual breakdown of the publication's political leaning, reporting reliability, and ownership, allowing you to see potential journalistic conflicts before you're telling a room full of people that Rudy Giuliani can do a kickflip. You want an example? Yeah, I bet you do. Did you know that the Oklahoma State Superintendent just mandated that the Bible must be incorporated into public schools for kids from 5th grade all the way through graduation? Let's check it out. Right away, you can see that over 150 news outlets reported on the story. Of these, 35% lean left, while only 19% lean right. You can also compare headlines to see how bias can affect framing. The Western Journal frames this as Oklahoma righteously putting the Bible back in schools, while National Zero focuses on the Oklahoma Education Secretary threatening to revoke teaching licenses for not incorporating the Bible. Different! Ground News also has my personal favorite feature, the blind spot feed, where you can see stories that the publications you usually read might not cover. Did you hear about the Pope's new swimming pool? Not that, but you know, stuff like that. You gotta check it out for yourself. Ground News helps you think more critically about how news is spreading and who's probably reading it, which helps you better understand our increasingly divisive world. And that sounds pretty damn good to me. And if you're thinking what I'm thinking, I encourage you to check out Ground News. And yeah, baby, we got a discount code for you. I'm talking ground.news/ I think /, but I've never really been able to tell the difference. Climatetown, that's the important part. Ground.news/ Climatetown, or just click that link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage level subscription, which gives you access to every single goddamn feature on the app. That's $4.9995 a month, which has a well-known $5 a month bias. Thank you. And now, back to Climatetown and the thrilling answer to the question, what do you think happens if you pump too much groundwater out of an aquifer? You run out of water, and it doesn't come back. The more water you pump out of the ground, the lower and lower the water table gets. This leads to a phenomenon called subsidence, where land slowly caves in hellmouth style. The more you pump, the deeper you have to drill your well until eventually you run out of water. It's a lot like putting all your bills on a credit card. It feels incredible for a while, but sooner or later, it's gonna catch up with you. And the way I know this is because it's happening right now in Arizona. People in La Paz County, Arizona, who used to have functioning groundwater wells, are waking up to find that they now have a very deep, very dry pipe in their yard. Because let me tell you about the Al Marai dairy from Saudi Arabia. As of 2018, it has been illegal to grow alfalfa in Saudi Arabia. Without getting too far into it, Saudi Arabia pumped the shit out of their groundwater from the late 1940s until a couple of years ago. And in that time, they used up approximately 80% of their fossil groundwater. They needed to look elsewhere for the most precious of resources. And due to the United States' loose groundwater laws, that meant buying land in Arizona and just taking America's groundwater. So they bought 15 square miles of prime Arizona desert, drilled deeper in the aquifer than the retirees and farmers in the county, and dangerously lowered the groundwater level by pumping up as much water as they wanted for $0. Freedom, it would seem, is free. And if you're wondering how much water Saudi Arabia pulled out of the ground, you're not alone. The Arizona State Land Department sent a memo to at least ask them to measure how much water was getting pumped out because they were worried about groundwater depletion as a result of agricultural leases in the Butler Valley. But unfortunately, the Arizona state government at the time wanted to be cautious of tangling with a powerful company, and the metering request was denied. But I mean, come on, how much water could Saudi Arabia possibly have taken? And I don't presume to know how the people of La Paz County, Arizona feel about this. But luckily I don't have to, because there's a recording of them explicitly saying how they feel about this, thanks to the top-tier journalism by a publication called Reveal.
You're saying it's perfectly legal for these people to come in here, drain the aquifer, and the local people have to re-drill their wells that they've lived there for years?
We gotta move on. But yes, they're not breaking the law.
Now, Saudi Arabia shipping alfalfa back home sounds pretty bad until you remember that the #1 exporter of alfalfa, with more exports than all other countries in the world combined, yes, it's the United States. It's not always the United States in sentences like that, but like 9 times out of 10 it is. And yes, a ton of those exports come from the most water-constrained parts of the Colorado River Basin. You want to hear something really wild? In the Imperial Valley, after they harvest that flood-irrigated alfalfa for the 12th time that year, 12th, LFTH, that's a fucking obstacle course of a word. Whatever, it's more expensive to send that alfalfa to cows in another part of California than it is to cram it onto a cargo ship and send it off to 2 of the biggest alfalfa importers in the world, China and Japan. And if you're wondering how that could possibly be cheaper, here's a fun little factoid you can tell your friends. The US imports more stuff from China than we export. So there's a constant stream of shipping containers coming to America full and going back empty. China and Japan are eating an increasing amount of beef and dairy, but rather than use their own precious water resources, they can buy and ship American livestock feed like alfalfa across the Pacific for next to nothing, cramming those otherwise empty cargo ships full to the brim with compressed alfalfa hay. And I don't want to be overly dramatic, but this basically amounts to exporting water. Water that we apparently really need in the arid West. And I'm not being overly dramatic, because this is exactly what a bunch of much smarter and more informed people than me have already said. I'm just saying it way louder than them! Also, big shout out to Arizona water expert Professor Robert Glennon for all the help he gave us on this episode. He wrote this incredible book, Unquenchable. You should totally read it, link in the bio, as well as a bunch of other articles, and another book. How many books have you written? Is it 0 books? Would 0 be an accurate count? I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. I think this sun is permanently cooking my brain. Let's wrap this up. The United States is currently in the middle of a serious water crisis that we are treating very unseriously. We haven't updated our Western water laws that we cobbled together to help 1900s-era farmers settle water disputes without shooting each other, and now those laws have metastasized. Our available river water is decreasing due to climate change, but rather than reward conservation, we're incentivizing farmers to use all the water they possibly can. Our groundwater is being pumped out faster than it can be replenished, but rather than regulate it or even measure it, we're giving it away for free with the purchase of a little bit of land. Our credit card debt is coming due, and our reaction is to continue spending. So what are we gonna do about it? Well, step 1 is to stop incentivizing the misuse of water. And in some ways, this is already starting to happen. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs has canceled one of the leases Saudi Arabia was using to pump unlimited groundwater and is set to terminate 3 more in the coming year. Which seems like a win until you remember that American companies are doing the exact same thing. I mean, even Arizona's state pension fund has invested $175 million in a Wall Street company that's buying up land in Arizona for groundwater access. And the pension fund only stopped when some people found out and pushed them to divest. So yeah, state governments need to rethink how they regulate groundwater. And you can get involved by joining some of the local and state groups that are pushing for stronger or any legislation. Even pushing the government to measure, not stop, not cap, measure how much groundwater is being removed would be a good start. But a much more powerful fix would be to readdress the system of double stampies, no erases water rights that got us into this situation in the first place. Unfortunately, this is not a simple thing to do, because for the most part, water rights holders are just farmers trying to make a living. Sure, there are a few monster mash-sized farms, but there are thousands of struggling farmers out there. And if we charged them an extra $1 million for their water, or just took it away, that would be a real dick move. It would also be an excellent way to starve America, because that's where the food comes from, and a lot of food is mostly water. If you're tempted to think about this like a farmers versus city problem, and that farmers are taking too much water, just remember, they're not using that water for slip and slides, brother. They're using it to grow crops and livestock that people in cities eat. Most farmers aren't wasting their water, they're deciding what to grow based on what they can make from the market and what the current water laws are. But still, water conservation's gotta come from somewhere. And if you're looking at the same charts that I am, a pretty obvious place is cattle feed. When it comes to the Colorado River, if every single person and business in every major city shut off all their water valves, you would only cut 17% of the water demand. But again, it's not that simple. Unwinding the law of the river would constitute a seismic shift in American agriculture, and honestly, I have no idea how that would look. But there are some actionable steps we can take to address water shortages. Most regulations require rights holders to allocate all the water or none of it. And loosening some of these archaic policies could allow farmers to conserve their water use through more efficient practices like drip irrigation, then sell their extra water. The money from the extra water could even go to help fund some of those expensive drip irrigation installations. So, you know, that's pretty nice. The Inflation Reduction Act has also earmarked a few $1 billion to help with the Western water crisis, and it seems like about $1 billion of that might go to pay farmers to fallow their fields to save water. Is that the perfect solution? I don't know, but it is something. And while cities and industries are just a small percentage of water use in the West, we're still talking about trillions of gallons. That means conservation efforts like not demanding every house in America comes standard with a Kentucky bluegrass lawn, aka one of the largest irrigated crops in America. Now you may be saying, well, grass isn't a crop, we don't eat it. Fucking exactly. Another way to conserve is to install low-flow appliances and fixtures in buildings and houses. As insane as it sounds, the city of Las Vegas has actually been making a huge effort to conserve their water, as are a lot of other cities in the West. One study found that as population grew by 24% in the 28 urban areas they looked at, overall water usage dropped by 18%, which is pretty cool. And if you're looking to get involved in an organization that works on these problems, you are in luck, my friend. Our buddies over at Climate Changemakers have put together a playbook that you can use to contact your local representatives to urge them to take action on water conservation through the upcoming Farm Bill. So if you're looking for a policy solution to push forward, check it out. Link in the bio. It's technically a description, but I say bio, so whenever I say either one, just know that that's in the text below this video. But the big Mac father of all of them is probably to stop demanding and consuming so much meat and cheese. And I know, times are tough right now, and those two items account for a lot of people's favorite food. I'm not in charge of you, you're the boss of your own body. I will say that if the principles of supply and demand are to be believed, farmers wouldn't use as much water to grow cattle feed if we didn't consume so much beef and dairy. It takes literal hundreds of gallons of water to produce a single pound of either beef or cheese, so a collective effort to reduce our consumption would actually have a big effect. And I don't know what that means for you. Maybe it means going meat and dairy free for a few days a week, or trying a plant-based meat alternative, or any number of replacements for the current status quo of flooding a desert for cow food. And in case you're thinking Americans are just hardwired to eat beef and there's simply no way to change that, I guess I would point you to the fact that industry groups are constantly spending money trying to convince America's children to eat more meat. and this should really be its own episode, but if we all naturally eat beef, then why are industry groups so hell-bent on getting pro-meat propaganda into schools? If everybody was just naturally drinking a bunch of milk all the time, why would the dairy industry need to hire actual director Michael Bay to make this insanely high-quality milk commercial?
And that was the Vienna wood dance indeed. And now let's make that random call with today's $10,000 question. Who shot Alexander Hamilton in that famous duel? All right, let's go to the phones and see who's out there.
Hello?
Hello, for $10,000, who shot... Excuse me?
Hold on, let me get some milk. No!
I'm sorry, maybe next time.
Got milk?
Good Lord, that is an awesome commercial. Imagine being so good at making commercials that they give you the Transformers franchise.
You get way more into the characters of the robots this time. They're so good. They're always doing the right thing. They're always doing good. And I think people like that.
And also for the kids out there, there was a time when not everybody knew about the life of Alexander Hamilton. Before Lin-Manuel Miranda, nobody even knew that Alexander Hamilton was a rapper. And this is just my personal opinion, man, but if everybody really liked milk, you wouldn't have to make an ad about it. Milk is fucking famous. Everybody knows what milk is. Just let the people decide if they want to drink milk. Leave me alone, milk. Kramer!
What am I drinking? Milk?
Oh shit, conclusion music? We're home free, baby. Okay, if you take away just one thing from this episode, it should be to think a little bit more about how the world uses its water. Now, if you're concerned about your personal water usage, it's a good idea to consider all the ways you use water and not just when you turn on the faucet or blast your lawn. Water used on your behalf is also a big factor, and that's influenced by a lot of things, including what you eat and some archaic ass laws from the 1900s that you probably don't have a lot of control over. Okay, that's the end of the episode. I probably could have gone on for another hour about this, but every episode has to end somewhere, and I guess this is that somewhere. There are a ton of other climate issues with animal agriculture, and I swear to Christ, we're gonna get to them, but we figured we'd start with water on account of how water is the thing that makes all life work. And speaking of water, big thanks to Teal Leto, aka Western Water Girl, for all of her help with the research on this episode. If you're looking to learn more about the Western US water shortage, you simply must check out her videos. Seriously, no notes, 10 out of 10, go check them out. Also, thanks so much to Young's Farm on Long Island for letting us get a bunch of farmy looking shots. They're doing great work out there. We also bought some pies on our way out, and let me tell you, those pies kicked ass. Ooh, and all this pie talk has probably got you thinking, do we still have a Patreon page? You better believe we do, but something has changed. Something has shifted. That's right, we got an official Climatown phone line. And now, hot crackers, if you're a patron, you can call me. Not all the time. Not just any old time. That would ruin my life. Okay, there's gonna be specific times you can call me, and if you don't hit one of those times, you can leave a message, okay? It's supposed to be for fun. Don't fuck with me. All right, there's also a bunch of other fun perks on the Patreon page. We've also got a ton of fun perks on the Patreon page, like behind the scenes footage, town halls, a Patreon only Discord channel, discount tickets to the live shows, and a bunch of other stuff. The Patreon page is the backbone of Climatown, so if you like what we're doing and you want to support us, Patreon is a great place to do it. We've also got t-shirts. They're made by a company called TS Designs in North Carolina and sent to you by the good folks at Ethics Merch. We made a whole episode about merch that you can check out, but to sum it up, these are nice shirts that are made entirely in the Carolinas with a fully transparent supply chain that actually pays workers a living wage. If you want one of our very nice t-shirts, you can buy one using the link down below. We've also got a podcast called The Climate Deniers Playbook, hosted by me and my childhood friend and Daily Show writer Nicole Conlan, and executive produced by Ben Boult. And we have a newsletter that me and Climatown writer-director Matt Nelsen write. There's links to all that in the description below. That's the end of the video, and I've been waiting quite a while to do this. Okay.
I have not tried marijuana. I have never used it at any time.
Did you hear that pop?
Goodbye.